Welcome to Matt's Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier, and I trust the week's gone well so far. It's always a pleasure catching up with Anne Soy and Thomas Anta of the BBC. We were speaking about the rebasing that's going to be happening today on the Kenyan economy, taking it up just over 20%, expected to be just above $50 billion. My main point was that it isn't a silver bullet, in the sense that a lot of people, particularly on social media, keep coming over and saying, well, now we're a middle-income country. Well, yes, but it's not going to magic any money out of the air, as it were. I took this photograph of the approach to Jomo Kenyatta International Airport as I was coming back via Qatar from Milan. And as we approached the runway, I took this photograph, and you can see the detail, but it's very, very opaque. Macro thoughts, of course, I wrote over the weekend, a small window for sharks as dollar rises. I was talking about Stanley Druckenmiller, who with George Soros bet the bank against the Bank of England on September the 16th, 1992, and made off with £1 billion in the days when $1 billion was a serious amount of stash. And he said, as a macro investor, my job for 30 years was to anticipate changes in the economic trends that were not expected by others, and therefore not yet reflected in securities prices. The point I was making in this piece is that the dollar has just started getting going, that I think there will be a lot of blood in the water, and there is a small window if we want to be the sharks, and essentially putting together folks buying some dollar call options, sort of 10-to-1 return, and then we can even do it in sizes of $5,000 if you want. And on that note, I'll put up the photograph of Damien Hirst's The Shark, which I quite liked, actually. My home thoughts, I tend to find myself hunting the world like a panther. Since I've been reading too much Pablo Neruda of late, sniffing the air for this one Guerlain eau de toilette, and I found it in the duty-free in Doha. Typically it's only sold in Harrods and a few other establishments, and it's very difficult to find because I'm normally just moving somewhere for a short period of time. I don't get a chance to really look around, and Aisha remembered it straight away from her childhood, so that was quite fun. I'll put up a photograph of midnight in the lounge in Doha, and it's rather spectacular, I must admit. And from the lounge, a photograph of Doha taken from the sky at about 7:30 in the morning as we took off, and we flew over Yemen, Ethiopia. And as you leave the Middle East, the air is baked by the hot sun, no clouds to be seen. I could see all the way down into the desert. And then slowly crossing Ethiopia, a few clouds and sort of new cloud formation. And then as we approached Kenya, there was a big bank of clouds before it all opened up as we entered Nairobi. Painting the rosa red is a vanilla financier cake bite coated with champagne-infused melted marshmallow, all placed in the center of a white chocolate-dipped rose petals. This creation by Dominic Ansell is handcrafted for Wonderland. It looked rather tasty, I must say. Political reflection, so much going on, frankly. It's difficult to keep up with everything, but in my view remains that the new normal is a very arrhythmic world. Glenn's Peace tweeted this photograph of tens of thousands of young protesters demonstrating in Hong Kong, and that certainly has gained a lot of momentum. It'll be interesting to see how the Chinese handle it, and I think they're going to have to handle the situation with more of a velvet glove. Ashraf Ghani has been sworn in as the new president of Afghanistan. The Independent is saying ISIS is only an hour away from Baghdad, with no sign of an Iraqi army being able to make a successful counterattack. Jelpke said if the US government and its allies are going to wage a serious struggle against ISIS, they must first end the support for the jihadis coming from Turkey and the Gulf states, and that's a fact. Hassan Rouhani told Christian Amanpour airstrikes against ISIS militants are a psychological operation, not a military one. We need a vast campaign of operations. The aerial bombardment campaign is mostly, I would say, a form of theatre rather than a serious battle against terrorism. And then following on those comments from a very interesting press conference, I don't know if you caught it, I happened to, Chuck Hagel, and I think it was Dempsey, and Carter Ham, who headed the Pentagon's Africa Command, explained the implications of a no-fly zone in an interview Sunday on the CBS program Face the Nation. Ham oversaw the no-fly zone imposed during the 2011 US-NATO war on Libya. We should make no bones about it, he said. It first entails killing a lot of people and destroying the Syrian air defenses and those people who are manning those systems. And then it entails destroying the Syrian Air Force, preferably on the ground, in the air if necessary. This is a violent combat action that results in lots of casualties. And in this article, it's saying the drumbeat for war has been carefully worked out to prepare public opinion in the United States and internationally for a dramatic escalation of military operations in the region, including the direct and open targeting of the Syrian government of President Bashar al-Assad, and I think that remains. That's the redirection risk as I characterized it. The New Crusades is a piece by Pankaj Mishra, who says, "We've assumed too easily and complacently the moral superiority and eventual triumph of the secular. But Islamic State has more in common with the utopia of the fanatically secular Khmer Rouge than anything in the long history of Islam. We need fresher ideas to understand the great violence of our times, which is far from being explained by die-hard secularists blustering against religious extremism." Interesting point. I like this picture from Twitter of how Ai Weiwei transformed Alcatraz into a work of political art. Interesting piece on Bloomberg about how the US is still the dog wagging tail of the world economy, and that was in part what I was saying in a small window for sharks as dollar rises. Coming to the currency markets, the euro is trading around 127, dollar index 85.54, Japanese yen 109.29. That got us the dollar got as high as 109.75 yesterday. Swissy 0.9506, pound 162.64, Aussie 0.8759. The Aussie has fallen 6.2% in September. India rupee 61.647, South Korean won 10.5215. Fell against most of its majors. Peers after report showed factory output fell 2.8% in August from a year earlier, the first contraction since May. The Rial 244.66, Egyptian pound 715.14, and the South African Rand 1124.98. The Bloomberg Spot Index, which tracks the currency against 10 major peers, retreated 0.1%. It's up 6.4% since June 30, poised for the best quarter since September 2008. Dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart. A little bit of profit taking, I think we're in that sort of period right now, but this is an option, I think, an entry point to buy dollar call options. A gauge of the US dollar against 10 major peers reached its most overbought level yesterday on record, going back to 205. So a little bit of a drawdown, and then I think we get, we're just one sticker, one employment number away from a real, another second leg acceleration in my view. Euro dollar 126.94 area, but headed lower. Draghi's done a good job on wrestling it lower. Gold, I'll put up a 1-year chart. That's 1218.115. I think it's a sell, and I think there's a big breakdown risk in gold. Crude oil, I think, is based out. I'll put up a 1-year chart. Last trading at 94.65. It's been the key support is at 88.50. Its drawdown did catch me by surprise, and I think, you know, usually in this sort of geopolitical period, you would have found it considerably higher, but it speaks to the volume of oil exports that are being pushed out of the US because of their production. Sub-Saharan Africa, China has halted weapons sales to South Sudan after it discovered the state arms manufacturer sold millions of dollars worth of equipment to the war-torn nation, a Chinese embassy official said. It was terribly embarrassing, obviously. China North Industries Group Corp, known as Norinco, delivered its first consignment of a $38 million order to South Sudan in June. The Chinese government decided it was inappropriate to implement the remainder of the contract after details of the order came to light in July. No more weapons are heading to South Sudan, he said. There are some media reports that were alleging that the Chinese government was behind this business operation and wants to undermine this peace process. That is totally untrue. Excellent piece by International Crisis Group about Zimbabwe, saying, waiting for the future. Zimbabwe is an insolvent and failing state, its politics zero-sum, its institutions hollowing out, and its once vibrant economy moribund. A major culture change is needed among political elites, as well as commitment to national, as opposed to partisan and personal interests. Very hard-hitting. The IMF is saying it will help Zimbabwe produce debt repayment plan. In a statement at the end of a 2-week IMF mission to Zimbabwe, the head of the IMF office in Harare, Domenico Fanizza, said the IMF and Zimbabwe had also agreed to slash a wage bill gobbling up about 80% of the government budget and review a policy of forcing foreign-owned firms to sell majority stakes to locals. The mission welcomes Zimbabwe's decision to start working with the international financial institutions and the IMF to prepare a plan for clearing the outstanding arrears as a step toward resolving the country's debt challenge, Fanizza. It is encouraging that the authorities have come to the conclusion that Zimbabwe cannot address these challenges without the support of the international financial community, Fanizza. Balancing the primary fiscal budget will send a strong signal that Zimbabwe's government intends to live within its means while addressing the country's debt challenge by stepping up re-engagement with all creditors will be essential. The appreciation of the South African rand, the major currency of Zimbabwe's main trading partners, caused a liquidity crunch that has weakened economic activity. The external position remains precarious, with low levels of international reserves, a large current account deficit and external arrears, it added. The IMF said the technical program would also cover clarifying the indigenization and economic empowerment laws to help Zimbabwe boost mutually beneficial domestic and foreign investment, allay fears over property rights, and reassure markets of the government's open invitation to invest in Zimbabwe. Chinamasa, who's the finance minister, said we're equal to the task. We're going to ring-fence budget allocation towards social spending. Government has to reduce its public sector wage bill, which currently takes up 76% of the budget. And I remarked on Domenico's efforts some time ago, actually in June, when I noted, interestingly, and this was Chinamasa in particular, you will note a linguistic inflection point in Zimbabwe of late. And I said I thought that was entirely due to the IMF and Domenico, who was extremely good at handling these sorts of matters. 2014 Ibrahim Index of African Governance. At the continental level, average overall governance performance has registered a slight improvement, 0.9. Safety rule of law category has deteriorated over the past 5 years. A continuation of the trend from the previous 5 years. Continuous deterioration of rule of law. Cross-border violence is improving, but personal safety has deteriorated. My thinking around that really is that this is a consequence of this 21st century, where you've got lots of young people, especially in our cities, wanting it now, and I think that's a very key signal in the noise about Africa. Residents of the Somali capital, Mogadishu, are feeling safer and more optimistic than they were a year ago, according to a new survey. That's a good thing. Diageo targets further African growth with spirits ahead of beer. World's largest distiller, relying on spirits such as Johnny Walker whiskey and Smirnoff vodka to drive expansion in Africa, as economic growth boosts incomes and demand climbs for premium drinks. Diageo is based in London, of course. It's opening a Gilbey's gin factory in Mozambique, plans to begin bottling Smirnoff Ice there as well. We've been able to reach out to our consumer segment in these markets. Middle income and above consumers like quality brands and consume spirits. Africa's alcoholic drinks market is forecast to grow by 56% to $61.2 billion in 2018 from $39.3 billion last year. Biggest market, of course, is Nigeria. Johnny Walker is by far the biggest Scotch brand in Angola. It is in Africa, frankly. Anyone who sort of is making it or thinks they've made it, that is really the drink you'll find them looking for. Diageo is using the infrastructure it has from beer to help develop the distribution of spirits in Cameroon, Ethiopia and Ghana. With the same sales force for beer, we're able to supply our spirits brands. The company isn't planning significant further investment in beer due to increased competition from the likes of Sepp Miller. Beer requires a huge investment in capex, and also we need to understand the market properly to see whether we can be competitive. And I did an interview 52 days ago on the occasion of EABL's full year results with Charles Ireland. If you get a chance, have a look at that. Lots of insights to be gained about Africa strategy from that. Two images of the scanning electron micrograph of the Ebola virus, and talking about the exponential nature and the scary numbers. The 1.4 million worst case projection by the CDC. But essentially the key point to remember is that it's doubling itself every 20 days at the moment. And I'll put up another image I found from Salon of the same virus. South African all share is up 6.734% in 2014, but bear in mind it's corrected 2,871 points off a record high set on the 29th of July. It's now at 49,371, and stocks there fell for a fifth straight session on Monday. On that note, I'll put up a photograph of the sunset in Johannesburg that I took 178 days ago. Dollar ran 11.2468, 6-month chart coming up. As you can see, we're at more than 6-month lows, and I think there's a lot of risk that we break down to about 12. The Egyptian pound, very steady. Egyptian stock market rallied 1.84%. Yesterday, it's up 44.19%. Getting closer and closer to that key 10,000 level. Nigerian all-share bounced 0.7%. That's negative 0.541% this year and at 4-month lows. The Ghana Stock Exchange, which is at 17-week lows, is up 4.895% year to date. Of course, currency's been on the mend a little of late. I like this photograph of the Victoria Falls that I found on Bloomberg. Here in Kenya, inflation dipped in September. Price inflation fell to 6.6% compared to 8.36% in the previous month. Year-on-year inflation rate came to within the central bank's preferred medium-term range of 2.5% to 7.5%, and below the Reuters consensus forecast of 7.24%. The central bank left its key lending rate unchanged at 8.5% earlier this month. And I said, I think it validates the MPC's decision not to do anything the last time round and not to be panicked into a decision. I think the sharp fall in the rate of inflation is all about the price of oil. And I think the MPC had visibility on that forward price. And I think the MPC will do nothing throughout the year, and there will be no change. On the 2nd of September, I said that I thought the spike we saw that month was the apogee in the rate for 2014, and I think I'm correct. And I think the shilling, which is down about 3% this year, will continue to confound expectations as it has done before. It is trading at 89.259 last. UK has downgraded its travel warnings to Kenya. That's good news. Downgrade announced by the Deputy High Commissioner John Merton. We will be removing our advisory against all but essential travel to slum areas of Nairobi, although Eastleigh will remain. I expect this will help visitors to be more confident when travelling into JKIA and transferring to hotels. We will also be making explicit the fact that there are no travel advisories against the major game parks in Kenya, and removing language on crime in game parks. I expect this will help visitors be more confident about booking safaris. There was, unfortunately, no statement on the travel advisory issued against Mombasa, which has seen tourism in the coastal city take a nosedive. On that note, I'll put up a photograph of Mombasa Island taken on the sunset on Boxing Day last year. Advisories have seen JKI report a 12.2% drop in first half foreign passenger arrivals, while Moi Airport in Mombasa saw a 20% drop in foreign arrivals. Raila Odinga is alleging that shillings 15 billion was carted away in a truck. The Nairobi All Shares up 19.5755% this year, and just 1.239% below a record high set on the 23rd of September. The NSE 20 is up 6.719% in 2014, bounced 0.78% yesterday as the All Share bounced 0.65%. The NSE 20 is 149 points below a more than 6-year closing high reached on the 22nd of September. Foreign insurers eyepiece of Kenya. This is several international insurance companies have expressed interest in either buying stakes in existing Kenyan enterprises or setting up new outfits. I'll put up an interview that I did with Matt Lilly, who's the CEO of Prudential Africa. Eveready East Africa is set to close down its manufacturing plant in Nakuru from October the 1st, owing to competition from cheap imports from the east, and they're planning to turn that into a real estate project. And that really is a narrative that applies to many other companies, including a number of agricultural companies. I'll put up a link if you want to check Eveready's share price. As I said, the market turned higher yesterday. I think we remain in a bull trend. Safaricom rallied 1.18% to close at 12.85. I'm looking forward to interviewing Bob today, this afternoon at his office, and we'll publish that as quickly as we can. Car in General traded 1.36% of its shares, ticked 105% easier. KCB firm just under 1% to close at 58. It's just with whisker under a record high of 60 set on the 22nd of September. Equity Bank had more sellers than buyers yesterday, but bear in mind, it's up 73.98% year to date, and that's after having corrected 10% since the 23rd. NIC retreated 6.41%, that's all around the rights issue. Centum surged 9.166%. That's up a blistering 136.36% this year, and that's after a correction off an all-time high. We're still below that all-time high. Britam rebounded 5.22%. That's trades on a trading P of 25.17, and in my opinion, it's an unjustifiable, very substantial premium. Arthur River surged 4.678%, closed at 89.50, and that's a story about margin expansion once the Clinkers facility comes on stream. EABL firmed up. Kenya Orchards has rallied a mind-boggling 2,233% year to date, but all on 100 shares, which is a meaningless amount of money in a sense, because you could never really got on board. Once again, thank you for stopping by.